Most 40k games borrow the look and sound of the setting but ignore how it's played. They take the miniatures, the art style, the grimdark tone, and build a video game on top of it that behaves nothing like the tabletop. 7 games tried to capture the real thing, then the industry gave up. For the last 30 years, both digital and tabletop Warhammer games have increased in popularity. The video games give you real-time battles, cinematic kills, instant feedback loops. The tabletop gives you measuring ranges with rulers, rolling fistfuls of dice, and watching probabilities slowly crush your plans. 2 completely different experiences wrapped in the same skin. Between 1992 and 2018, 7 developers tried to capture the tabletop feeling in digital form. The rhythm of turns, the tension of dice rolls, the commitment to moves that might fail. This is a chronological tour through those games, why they mattered, and why that experiment ended. Space Crusade was the starting point. Developed by Gremlin Interactive in 1992, this adapted the Milton Bradley board game, which was itself a simplified version of early 40k, Warhammer with training wheels, designed for players who wanted the setting without the 2-hour rulebook. The significant part was how it tried to make digital Warhammer behave like tabletop Warhammer. You control 3-man marine squads moving through derelict ships. Every action is deliberate. Move 1 tile, open a door, trigger Overwatch, pray the dice go your way. The game is openly, unapologetically a board game run on a computer. The pacing is cautious, the stakes small, but that tension of one bad roll ruining your whole mission translates perfectly from the tabletop. Space Crusade doesn't try to hide that it's a board game pretending to be a video game. The rules sit right on the surface, visible and mechanical. The system counts under its breath and you can feel it happening. Primitive, but also the first time Warhammer's tabletop rhythm made it to the screen. The template was established here: visible rules, turn-based structure, outcomes decided by probability instead of reflexes. Quick question before we continue. Have you ever played any of these games? Drop a comment and let me know which one. I'm genuinely curious if anyone remembers Space Crusade. I think I still have the board game somewhere. Space Hulk and its sequel Vengeance of the Blood Angels are direct adaptations of the Space Hulk board game. We're talking about the 1993 DOS game and 1995 sequel here, not the 2013 remake or the first-person shooter Deathwing. Those are different animals entirely. These games put Terminators against Gene Stealers in claustrophobic corridors. You have limited command points, turn timers, and blip tokens that hide how many enemies are coming for you. The brilliance lies in how precisely they model the tabletop's pressure. Everything comes from the original rules: blip tokens hiding enemy numbers, Overwatch that can jam at any time, objectives that force you to balance speed against survival. The design never gives you full control, it just lets you manage the chaos. When a Terminator Stormbolter jams, it doesn't feel like a random mechanic, it feels like you failed a dice roll in your head. This is procedural horror built from dice logic, where every move is a gamble and every mistake a slow-motion failure. These are some of the most stressful tactics games ever made. There's no flow or rhythm to lean on. Every move is a calculated risk. Every loss feels personal because the system is transparent. Space Hulk and Vengeance of the Blood Angels aren't fun in a modern sense, but they're the truest digital mirror of Warhammer's tabletop dread. Perfect systems grinding players down one turn at a time. Final Liberation is the closest any video game has come to capturing large-scale tabletop Warhammer. Based on Epic 40k, the rule set for commanding detachments instead of individual models, it turns that into a slow, procedural PC wargame. The presentation is ancient now: flat terrain, tiny sprites, and live-action cutscenes that belong in a local theatre production. Underneath that mess sits a proper rules engine. Units act as detachments. Facing, morale, and terrain all influence outcomes. Initiative determines who moves first, and combat is handled through clean, visible resolution, the exact opposite of modern Warhammer spectacle. You get a turn order, a morale check, and a pile of numbers that decide your fate. Every calculation is visible. Camera angles stay functional. Pure mathematics drives every outcome. Final Liberation feels like a campaign book written in code. You don't play it for excitement, you play it to watch the system execute itself. It captures the scale of the tabletop perfectly. Armies grinding each other down, leaders influencing morale, every victory feeling like a process instead of an explosion. Slow, dry, and absolutely authentic, it understands that the tabletop isn't about action, it's about order and attrition. If you're enjoying this deep dive into forgotten Warhammer games, do me a solid and hit that like button, and subscribe if you want to see more weird game history like this. I've got a whole backlog of obscure strategy games nobody remembers. Chaosgate brought Warhammer back to the tactical scale and leaned fully into 2nd edition mechanics. Every marine had action points to spend, morale that breaks under pressure, and percentage-based accuracy for each weapon. The interface is ugly, the pacing deliberate, and every shot feels like it's rolling dice behind the curtain. You place the Ultramarines against the forces of chaos, commanding squads across ruined landscapes where every move counts. The game punishes overextension. Rush and you die. Expose a flank and it stays exposed until your next turn. The same patient, unforgiving rhythm that defined Tabletop 40k at the time. A system that rewards caution and punishes enthusiasm. What makes Chaos Gate remarkable is its commitment to frustration. It lets randomness win. You'll miss when you shouldn't, panic when you can't afford to, and lose half a squad because of a bad chain of events. That's tabletop logic in digital form, slow, tense, and unpolished, but it understands Warhammer better than most of what followed. The campaign is a grind, but it's a grind that feels earned because every loss feels self-inflicted. You gambled and the dice didn't go your way. That's the tabletop experience distilled. Not random chance, but the feeling that you committed a move and then watched it fail in slow motion. After years of RTS dominance, Armageddon felt like a deliberate rejection of modern design. Built on the Panzercore engine, it's a throwback to the age of hex maps and combat tables. You move counters, check modifiers, and watch results unfold with clinical detachment. Turn-based, deliberate, and deeply uninterested in spectacle. What separates Armageddon from other strategy games is transparency. Every calculation is visible. Hit percentages, armor penetration, morale shifts. Less about discovery and more about discipline. You play to minimize risk, not to chase drama. Losing a unit hurts because it carries through over the campaign. Just like losing a painted squad on the tabletop. Unglamorous by design, the art is plain, the maps are static, and the sound effects could have come from a modem. But the structure is right. Every outcome feels earned through math, not manipulation. Armageddon treats each battle like a logistics problem, and that's exactly what large-scale tabletop Warhammer feels like when you're moving armor detached instead of heroic individuals. It's a campaign system pretending to be entertainment, and it works because it never lies about what it is. You're not commanding heroes, you're managing assets. When those assets succeed, it's because you read the numbers correctly and made the disciplined choice instead of the exciting one. Sanctus Reach built on Armageddon's foundation but shifted from hex grids to full 3D maps, bringing the same design philosophy into modern form. Turn-based, rigidly structured, and deeply uninterested in spectacle, you move, you fire, and you end your turn. Results are immediate and absolute. This is as close a modern game has come to capturing the tactile logic of the tabletop. Line of sight is clear, cover matters, and positioning decides everything. The pacing is deliberate and every decision has visible consequences. Not exciting, but satisfying in the same way measuring distances on a game mat is satisfying. Precision rewarded with progress. What makes Sanctus Reach stand out is its clarity. It understands that the tabletop is about information, not drama. You always know why something happened, and that transparency keeps the experience grounded in Warhammer's tactical DNA. Functional, methodical, and completely without vanity, a digital rulebook come to life. For players who wanted that pure tabletop experience in digital form, this was the pinnacle. The system is visible, the outcomes are predictable, and success comes from understanding the mechanics and executing them properly. Nothing hidden, nothing manipulated, just clean implementation of tabletop rules running at the speed of a computer. Adeptus Titanicus Dominus is the purest endpoint. A digital version of the old Titanicus tabletop game that's almost too faithful for its own good. Built by a one-man studio, it lets you command massive titans in turn-based combat where facings, reactor heat, and weapon arcs all matter. Essentially, a spreadsheet wearing 3D armor. Every mechanic mirrors the original rules. You manage heat build-up, shield regeneration, and physical damage to specific body parts. Movement is limited by facing, weapons have independent arcs, and initiative decides who fires first. Brutally procedural, there's no hand-holding, and the interface looks like something designed in an engineering lab. Underneath that roughness sits the exact digital model of the tabletop. The problem and the charm is how unfiltered it feels, so accurate that it forgets to be enjoyable. You spend more time resolving systems than fighting battles, yet that's precisely what makes it important in this lineage. Dominus represents the point where simulation overtook adaptation, where capturing the tabletop meant inheriting its tedium. Awkward, slow and deeply authentic, it's not a great game, but the last true attempt to turn Warhammer's physical mechanics into pure digital form. After this, developers stopped trying to replicate the experience and started using it as inspiration instead. Dominus is the end of the experiment that began with Space Crusade in 1992. And that's where the experiment ends. After Dominus, something changed. Developers stopped trying to replicate the tabletop and started using it as a backdrop for different kinds of games entirely. Dominus felt like the last gasp of developers trying to make Warhammer play like the tabletop instead of just looking like it. After that, the series shifted towards speed and flow. Mechanicus borrowed the turn-based structure but replaced dice with resource tension. Battlesects used tabletop logic as scaffolding, not foundation. The new Chaos Gate Demon Hunters is pure XCOM dressed up as 40k. Great games, but not tabletop games. But those 7 early games captured something the modern ones don't: patience, calculation, and risks that feel personal. They force you to think the way tabletop players think, managing chance, reading terrain, accepting loss as process instead of punishment. That tension of committing to a move that might fail, watching the dice decide your fate, and living with the consequences. That's what tabletop Warhammer is: imperfect systems, endless procedure, and the satisfaction of structure. These 7 games understood that. The rest just made it look good. So here's my question for you. Would you want a modern game that played exactly like the tabletop, or has the hobby evolved past that kind of pure simulation? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, subscribe for more deep dives into forgotten strategy games. I've got videos on obscure RTS titles, failed 4Xs, and the weird intersection of board games and computers. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.